right, Taya, welcome to the show. I'm delighted to finally have you here.
Thank you so much, Alex. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. I near fellow Floridian,
Yes.
as I make my next move to Miami. I'll be down in your neck of the woods.
Yes.
Um,
No.
the thing I always ask everybody when we start the podcast is, just to introduce themselves. Tell me a bit about yourself. Who you are. What you do, and how you got to where you are today. The whole journey.
Yes. So I am from Bosnia originally. We lived in Germany, my family and I did for about 6 years. We finally made Florida our home, Bradenton specifically because of IMG Academy. That used to be the Bolletary Academy. I played tennis. Had big hopes to turn pro. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. Was plagued with injuries and just decided to go to college route. And somehow I found through all of that, found that I'm incredibly passionate about hospitality. So Anna Maria Island is near Bradenton, of course. And I got a job starting in reservations for a property management company out here on the island. And here we are. I'm now currently the director of operations for Prime Vacations on Anna Maria.
That's awesome. And I suppose for people listening, Anna Maria Island is an island just on the Gulf side of the Florida coast. That's correct.
Yes, yes, it's
Yeah.
Tampa Bay.
And we were talking about yesterday when we were doing our prelim call. I mean, it's an enormous operation.
Yes,
And even your role specifically, but even what I read on the website, like 8 hotels, 2 restaurants, 2 marinas, and
yes,
1,400 plus rental properties. I mean, it's quite the operation you got down there.
yes, it is. It takes a lot of passion, a lot of great people, and to just make it work. So we do it. Sometimes when you review the numbers, it sounds so much scarier than what it is because we're in motion doing it every day, but we have a fantastic team that makes it happen.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I guess, because you've an awesome team, I think that's probably like a great way to kind of dive into our first bit of a topic, which is like
Yes,
your leadership philosophy. You had a great quote yesterday, and you were like, you're only as good as your people.
yes,
And I love that because I mean, like, hospitality first and foremost is a people business.
yes.
Like, you can have all the tech you want, but it is a people business. So tell me a bit about your role and how your leadership philosophy and style kind of permeates the sort of like operation you manage.
Yeah, so I'm a big believer that you're only as good as your people. And my my saying is there's no I in team, but there's Taya, because that's how you
Oh,
spell
that's so good. I'm actually going to make
it.
sure that that's in the notes.
I'm a believer in that because it does take, we're all play an intricate piece of the puzzle. And in order for the puzzle to be whole, you have to count on everybody. But ultimately, I want all of my team to lean on me. And I would never ask them to do anything that I'm not willing to do myself. And I think when it comes to, leadership style, I'm big on accountability, but I set my teams up for success because I want them to have all the tools. I have an open door policy. I'm always available for any questions after hours, anytime, because the more knowledgeable they are, the better the operation.
Yeah, no, totally. And I mean, I guess like accountability is such a huge deal when it comes to
Yes.
hospitality as well. Like, I
Yes.
mean, so like, how do you like engender that type of accountability with your staff? Like, I'm always like curious about that.
I I think it all starts having the right people in the right position. I think when it comes to hospitality, it to me hospitality is a passion. It's something you either have or you don't. I don't think it's anything you can teach. So if you have the right people in place, they are eager to learn and they very quickly identify, okay, the more I know, the more valuable I am and the more valuable I am to my team and the more I can produce and help. So if you have these like-minded individuals that are part of the operation or specific department. I think that's the biggest challenge and also the biggest
Yeah.
success. Have all the right people in the right positions.
It's actually very interesting what you just said there. I love how we're like right into this because like something I hear from everybody, yeah, whether you're a restaurant or whether you are a hotel, whether you're anything, is like service can be taught.
Yes.
Like you can teach somebody to make a bed, you can teach somebody how to use a point of sale, you can teach people how to use a computer, but can you teach them like how to smile when a guest looks at them? You know what I mean? Like, And I'm curious, you're very much a believer that like you're born with hospitality, it like
Yes.
almost like genetic kind of disposition towards hospitality.
I really do. I think that it's a skill that can, of course, be groomed and you can grow it, but you have to have it in you in order to be great. Because, our COO, John Munn, always says that, what we do on a good day is a difficult job. So when, things are tough and they don't go our way, you have to have people in place who are looking at it as a challenge, and how can they make that negative and turn it into a positive, and how can they relate to a guest who is super frustrated, right? Let's say they can't check, they can't get into the front door, and they're
Yeah.
upset and they're frustrated, and maybe they just traveled for 10 hours straight, and kids are crying in a car. So some of that negativity is translated now on the phone, and the frustration that you can't get in. You have to be a people person. You have to love hospitality to be compassionate and understanding, and be able to disassociate and understand that, okay, I'm not going to internalize this. This isn't necessarily towards me. This is just an upset guest that wants to get their vacation started. So in those situations, I do think that that compassionate piece about making things work and making things right for people, I don't think that that's something you can teach.
Which is kind of amazing, like in the sense that, you're in an island, and we were talking about this yesterday. I mean,
Yes.
there is an extraordinary like hiring challenge in front of you as well,
Yes.
in the sense that first and foremost, it's probably the most competitive hiring market ever in hospitality. And then coupled with that, like you're on an island that people have to like physically commute to. So it
Yes.
must be very difficult to find those kinds of people that you're looking for, is it?
It is. It's a very limited
Yeah.
talent pool, I would say, and it's very competitive because it is, of course, just it's really hospitality based. Restaurants and vacation rental management companies. So it is tough. It's very challenging. I think what makes it a bit easier for us is the fact that we are the leader on the island. So it's easier for people to grow, and it's easy to, not necessarily promise, but to sell the idea of growth. And they have the opportunity to, start like I did as a reservations agent part-time, that can grow. You can, as the more the more you grow, that there are opportunities within the company for it to become an actual career.
Yeah, exactly that. I think like, acknowledging that there is an opportunity for it to be a career, not just like a summer seasonal job. Not
Yes.
just like I hear that a lot from so many people. Like for example, I had somebody on recently, and they are a hospitality company that they do lots of like glamping
Yes.
in like national parks. And one of the big problems they have is actually just like getting people to do like more than just a season with them. It's like people want to go to a different national park, so it's very hard for them to like retain really good talent and just
Yes.
the challenge that comes with it. And so, like, when it comes to you and you're like trying to run an operation, like, how do you think about designing a program for people to stay? Like, do you guys have like a formal program for like training, upskilling, preparing kind of folks for leadership, or is it like just kind of like, I guess, like identifying the sort of one-off sort of folks and kind of trying to groom them as best you can?
It's a bit intricate with us because the way Prime Vacation started, it was we're three different vacation rental company management companies.
Yeah.
So AMI Locals acquired Anna Maria Island Accommodations, and then acquired Anna Maria Vacation. So we really merged these three big leaders on on the 7 Mile Long Island, and
Yeah.
into under one umbrella. So when it comes to the talent pool, it was very organically kind of set in place. People we identified the leaders in each department and people who had stepped up. But when it comes to future growth, we not to say we haven't gotten there yet, but we've been able to use the leaders that were with their respective company to basically just step in and lead those departments. We do have a lot of really really talented staff.
Yeah.
So as we're navigating, with Prime, there's been opportunities, and we've identified different positions that your normal vacation rental company would have. We just developed an inventory and purchasing department because of our size. We want to be able to provide our owners and our guests with top quality at the best price products. So it was a no-brainer when we chose that manager because she worked in our accounting department. She already had a niche for it. She was very passionate about it, and she had the accounting background. So it just made sense to move her into that role. So I think as we've been navigating our growth, we've been identifying the talent for the different positions.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. Like it is so difficult to find the right talent. And so one of the things I hear again and again and again from people is that, like, say post COVID, and like Florida is a unique exception because
Yes,
Florida,
it is.
you know, was very kind of like open during COVID. So like I
Yes,
guess, there was nowhere in America for people to go to except Florida. So it seemed like that you guys were able to take in a lot of, COVID refugee tourists, so to
yes,
speak. And
yes,
so when I think about like sort of the hiring challenge, I'm curious because I hear from so many people that, like, oh, we needed to fill our top of funnel, then we needed to fill our quality funnel, and now it's still so hard to hire people that we need to focus on retention as much as possible. But you guys never really kind of went through that per se, did you?
I wouldn't say that we had that issue just because operationally we do have, work from home shifts and we have some work from home positions, but mainly it is very much just because of our demographic and just the way the island is and the way we have structured our business, it's very much hands-on. So we haven't had many issues, but for the most part, everyone is, in office on island. We can deliver something if we need to. If a guest wants to come talk to us, we're here available. So we haven't really had issues with that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like unique, you know.
Yes, yes.
um,
Our market
and
is very, very, very different. So luckily, that hasn't been a challenge for us.
Yeah, no, I'm actually I'm smiling here. This is the first time that we've actually done the podcast without the camera, and so for those of the people that are listening, that I'm actually kind of smiling here, kind of like, oh, I'm so proud of you. It's awesome.
There's
And
always a
so
first.
yeah, and you know what I did love about, like, doing my homework on like Prime Vacations was
Yes,
actually, like, if you go to the About Us page on
yes,
your website, I just think like your culture is right there, where everyone's dressed
yes.
up like a superhero or something, or everyone's dressed up and I was like, you know what, those guys are having a great time and they're growing like crazy. I mean, that's like the dream in hospitality.
It is. You have to have the. I really truly believe that we found a right recipe. We have a phenomenal team, and as crazy as it sounds, we have a lot of fun doing what we do. And it's easier when you feel like, okay, if I need help, I can lean on, so someone in marketing, I can call someone in maintenance, and it's not it's not a challenge to get someone to do something. We're all here for the common goal. And I've been in this industry for 9 years now, and I feel like I've worked for a phenomenal company. It's really great to do what I do with such phenomenal people that I can learn from every day. Every day is a challenge. That's what I love about this industry. There's no recipe for it. Everything's very muddy and gray. Depending on if we have a hurricane, if it's red tide, if, it's extremely cold for Florida, believe it or not. Last year, we had a cold spell and none of the pools were working, and just, navigating through just issues like that. When you have the right staff that is supportive, it just makes it so much easier. And a lot of the times, it's what gets you through a tough day.
No, totally. And I think a lot about culture when it comes to like hospitality companies that are thriving. Because I feel, and I said this in a few of my episodes before, but I feel what separates good from great is actually the culture. And I'll give
Yes.
you an example. Somebody I had on the podcast maybe about 2 or 3 months ago, a guy called Ryan Nowicki, who is the director of OpEx at Dave and Buster's. And
Yes.
he was like to me, he was like, like fundamentally, like we're just an arcade with food. You know what I mean? If you break it
Yes.
down, like its core component. But he's like,
Yes.
why are we at 200 locations and so many competitors of ours are not even remotely near that? And he's like, in my mind, it's the culture. It's the people that
Yes.
work here. It's the people care. The people are looked after, and they make the experience for people to come here like awesome.
Absolutely.
And it sounds to me that you have a very similar sort of, first of all, outlook, but also second of all, practice of that.
Yes. Well, that's exactly what I joke around and say, in theory, all we're doing is renting some houses on the beach. Why is it so
Yeah.
complicated? But there's so much to it. So it's, being able to turn 400 or 500 homes in a matter of 6 hours on a Saturday,
It's
it
unbelievable.
takes it takes dedication, not just from our staff but our partners, our vendors, to make sure that we're prioritizing them and that we're on their beck and call basically when they need us and vice versa. So if you don't have that culture, I think without the culture, it all starts falling apart because again, going back to you're only as good as your people. So the company can have and provide an incredible product, but without the people that believe in it and see it through and make it happen, you really have nothing.
Yeah. And that's the thing, and we spoke about this yesterday, about technology, for example,
Yes.
you know, like, I, what's my take as the impartial observer, quasi therapist in podcasts in my time? I'm like, I think technology is a great enabler, but I
Absolutely.
think lots of hospitality businesses have like succeeded and failed by misusing or using it appropriately. And what I mean by misusing is, there are certain like sort of like restaurants you'll go into that have like a touch screen and they won't have anybody to show you how to use a touch screen. And so now you're like, I don't know how to order my cheeseburger. Or you go to a hotel and they have like keyless entry and you don't know how to use the keyless entry. And now you're like, oh, this is so annoying. Like, I wish
Yes.
I knew how to use it. And it's like
Yes.
simple things like that like seem like they're a great application, but are actually things that actually, impact the guest experience. And
Yes.
so when it comes to technology, like, what's your kind of like operating philosophy behind like implementing sort of technology improvements in a human business?
I think that the businesses that have not embraced technology and the growth in the last even 5 years, I wouldn't say have failed, but have struggled, especially if, on Anna Maria Island. It's a small island. You have a lot of the companies that have been around for a very long time. And I think they took the change very difficult.
Yeah.
Still, like when I first started at Anna Maria Island Accommodations, even though they had keyless entry, they still made all of their guests come to the office to pick up a card with a number for your key lock, just
Yeah.
because they were so afraid of the change of not seeing guests face to face because they didn't know what that would mean for the business. But on the other side, they were frustrating their guests because we had acquired more and more homes. People were waiting in line longer and longer for information that could simply be texted to them or emailed or even given over the phone. So I think that you have to embrace technology and use it to your advantage to free up more time for you to maybe focus more on, areas of improvement, the culture, staffing, whatever it may be. But I think that relying too far and too much on technology can also be very limiting and hurtful because AI is everywhere. And I do think of course, it's the future and it can be super helpful, but we are in the business of people. So if you forget that, if you lose that human factor, no matter how quickly you get that information over, we haven't achieved anything. I'm always a big believer in that we in this industry specifically, we sell a feeling. We're selling a feeling to the guests when they're first booking that property. They may be in Wisconsin and it's, below zero and they're freezing. We're sending them these beautiful homes and we're trying to tell them, well, you can eat here, you can enjoy your margarita on the beach, you can do this and that. It's really just selling that feeling. So in turn, then when the guests arrive, if you don't sell the fact that you care about their stay, that you care about them in our homes and not just, as a customer, but as a human being, if we don't pick up the phone, if you don't have that human interaction, I think it can go south very quickly, especially in a negative situation where they feel like, okay, this is not working and you're just texting me and no one's there to pick up the phone, or you pick up the phone and it's an outsourced phone call. I think there's something to be said being here on island with our doors open to welcome our guests, whether it's a positive or a negative situation.
Totally. I mean, I got a question for you. Like, what, in terms of like technology implementation, what has been a really successful one for you that you've seen has really improved like the guest experience?
I would say so. We use Breezeway, the software system we use for a work order system for housekeeping, inspections, and maintenance. And they have a texting feature, and that has been hugely beneficial to be able to just simple answers to guests very quickly. I think, if you're on the beach and you're having an issue or you have a question about, what time is my technician coming out or was my dishwasher fixed, it's so much easier than a phone call, and it's less disruptive. So we have found that, guests are much quicker to respond via text on the
Yeah.
simple questions, and then in turn, of course, it frees up our phone lines and our agents to be more accessible to guests that want that communication over the phone. When we have power outages, if there's issues with any kind of mass message that we want our in-house guests to know, even if we have promotions for one of our restaurants, which we have really fantastic restaurants. If we have promotions, it's just such easy communication to guests, and they're very receptive of that. Much more receptive, I would say, email, because on vacation, you're not really monitoring your email.
No, that makes sense. And so I have a dog. My dog is barking. Stop it.
It's okay.
It's like behaviors. I've got 2 dogs, and now she's barking. I'm like, why are you barking, girl? There she goes. I guess I'll have to edit this part out. 20 minutes in. Yeah, it's interesting. When it comes to improving the guest experience, because again, there are times when people are just not able to even take the implementation of that and make it happen properly.
Yes.
And a negative experience with offering that sort of capability or offering that to a guest and it not working, it's a fine line between a guest having a great time and a guest going, I really enjoyed staying there, but Jesus, the tech was just appalling and it just annoyed me.
Yes.
And it's like, you're like, God, trying to do so well. And I think that's where a lot of hospitality is at the moment, where it's trying to catch up with the technology sort of preferences of
Yes.
guests and not over tech or over design the
Yes.
sort of guest experience, which I think we're seeing a pendulum switch back from over teching to getting the right tech and managing it appropriately. I think post-COVID, everyone's just been trying to catch up and just
Yes.
put as much tech in there, and now
Yes.
realizing, oops, we need to not do as much of this anymore.
Yes. No, I agree with that.
And tell me, one of the things, you've got so many places. How many locations are you formally responsible for?
I specifically am just responsible for Anna Maria Island. We have several property management companies on Siesta and Lido Key, and there's a director of operations there as well who oversees a bit of a smaller operation. But for me, luckily, I'm just focused on Anna Maria Island. We also do have about 40 properties that are in the Bradenton area, so they're just off the island, but really in the same vicinity.
Yeah, because it's funny, when I'm on the website and I was looking at it earlier, I was like, it says showing 12 of 616 properties. And I'm like, okay, Taya's got quite the operation over there.
Yes,
quite
I do.
The operation. And so one of the things that I'm always fascinated about, because we were talking about tech as well, which was data.
Yes.
And being able to use data to make informed decisions.
Yes.
Is there, how do you think about using data to manage sort of your 616 properties? Does that mean 616 on the island of Anna Maria?
Yes.
Or is that
yes.
So loads under your remit. So is there a big kind of evolution in sort of your role in hospitality to be more data focused?
Yes. I think that obviously a lot, if not most of what we do is very, very emotionally driven. It's all, you have a big check-in day. Everyone's, in the moment. It's for me, the most important piece, as I grew in my role and as I went from being an operations manager to the director of operations for all of these homes. It was really crucial to kind of take the emotion out of it and not make decisions based on perception. It's very easy to hear, I've observed, maintenance technicians complaining about, let's say, the traffic, right? Well, that's true, but how do we offset that? How do we offset? Okay, well, all of these people are calling in. All right, let's start using the texting feature. There's so much perception that goes in. If let's say on a good day, you don't hear a peep from anyone, the assumption is it's a good day. But you could have all of these issues that you're not aware of because you haven't implemented any metrics. So the way I use data, for example, for our housekeeping department, through our software system, we started measuring, how many recleans do we have? Okay, well, how many recleans per company do we have?
Yeah.
because if we have 1,200 check-ins, not on a single given day, but over
Yeah, it's a lot.
if we have 1,200
Oh,
check-ins in a
oh
matter
my
of,
God.
in a time span of a month or two, what's an acceptable number of recleans, because every time you have a reclean, a guest that's not happy with the condition of the home, it's a big deal for us. We take it seriously. But if it's
Yeah.
1 out of 1,200, that's a fantastic number. But if it's 10 out of 1,200, 50, we don't know unless we know. So we've created these metrics to really kind of focus on, okay, how are we really doing? Taking the emotion out of it. How
Yeah.
many tasks do the maintenance techs complete? How many work orders are they able? Why is one able to be more efficient than the other? And really figuring out, okay, because they load their truck up with their tools, early in the morning, they get ready for the day, as opposed to someone who doesn't. Let's implement a policy. Let's change the process. So I think,
Oh, that's awesome.
being able to do that is huge. Same with our inspections team. It's a very seasonal, very part-time position. Inspectors
Yeah.
go in homes after cleaners, ideally after cleaners. Sometimes we're not that lucky, but to really ensure that the home is guest ready. So we train them, we show them, to report issues. But if, let's say, a maintenance technician goes out because an inspector said the TV is not working, but determines that it was just unplugged, we're able now with these metrics to see, okay, how often does this happen? Who are the people that are reporting it? And let's have that training with them,
Yeah.
and that way we're more efficient. We're addressing the issues as they arise. And again, taking the emotion out of it, because there's always a reason why. So if we know the reason, the actual reason, we can address it and fix it and move on.
Yeah. No, exactly that. And I think like it's amazing that you're able to use data in such a clinical fashion. You know what I mean? Like to be like, how do I use it to inform better business decisions?
Yes.
Like I think a lot of people are like afraid of data.
Yes.
In the sense it's like, oh,
I was one of them.
Yes. Well, there you go. Exactly. So like, let's talk about that. Like what was it about data originally that kind of got you kind of spooked?
Yes.
Like what was there just like what I don't know? It's like it scares me, or was it like, like what about data kind of was like for you? Like what was your moment of clarity, so to speak?
I think my moment of clarity was with us merging these different cultures and companies together. Everyone felt like their way of running certain or decision making process was better. So
Yeah.
if I'm going to oversee all of it, I want to make educated decisions, because just because one person's saying it should be done this way or that way, I should be well informed, and maybe we
Yeah.
meet somewhere in the middle, or maybe it's neither, neither option. So it was a bit scary because I had to create my own metrics.
Yeah.
There is no way of none of the software systems we use provide that. You have to kind of create your own reporting. And I'm not a very, like I told you in the beginning with my camera, I'm not a very techie person. But again, it goes back to having an amazing team, being able to convey my idea and what I wanted. And we kind of worked on it together. So that was my decision making. Really, that's where it came from. It's that I don't want to lead this amazing company in a wrong direction. But the only way I can do better is if I know exactly what the issues are. And I think in knowledge, there's power. So even if things are a lot worse than I initially thought, at least I know now what we need to address to turn it around. I'd rather do that than be caught off guard and an issue identified while we're in the middle of season and all these people are checking in, or we have upset guests or owners or even staff. I'd like to be prepared. So that was my big aha moment. What worked for the smaller companies, and just leading by making the best judgment is not going to work at this scale, because you have to have really informed that make decision making basically.
Yeah. No, exactly. And I think like, it's great to hear you like to say that, because I think there's probably lots of people out there that are like don't even know where to
Yes.
start with data. Like I think about, like, say for us, for example, even at Landed, like how we talk about like acquiring candidates is very like economically driven. We talk about cost per hire. How much you spending on like your ads on Indeed or whatever to find somebody, and speaking about it in a maths perspective as opposed to like, from like a well, I spent 2000 and I got this, I got a couple of people in, you know what I mean? It's making it like, no, how do you make it more efficient? How do you think about like
Yes.
your processes, like looking at the data? What is the data telling me? Okay, wow, we're getting all these candidates from this one neighborhood. Maybe we should focus our efforts either on like, marketing at these areas, or we should be like looking at like sort of referral programs, like the insights that the data can give to inform a better guest experience, or what kind of
Yes.
separate, I think, good from great. And to your point earlier, like the companies that like have been taking on technology and testing it are the ones that are winning today versus the ones that were a bit more reticent in the past.
Absolutely.
I feel like that's what you kind of said, but I correct me if I'm wrong.
No, no, no. It's yeah, that's exactly what I meant by that. And I do think, with data as well, because we're in the in the industry of people, a perfect stay is expected. People pay a lot of money and we present these beautiful homes online. So they expect them to be immaculate and perfect and for nothing to go wrong. So a lot of times, if something does go wrong, we focus on that immediately, but then, internally forget to think about, okay, we've inspected, all these homes without any issues. So I think you can use that data as well for your staff, as I'm introducing it, in the last 2 years, as we've introduced it in our meetings with our management team. It makes them feel better, because day to day, you're just dealing with guests, or you're just dealing with, making sure the houses are in great condition. You kind of become immune to it. But when you see that feedback, what I do makes a difference. What I do, us doing it this way is working. I think it's very empowering for the staff as well.
Awesome. Exactly that. Empowering for the staff. And so, you want to think about like, say, like accountability for the staff you're talking about earlier. Like, I
Yes.
think there's no getting away from the numbers as well.
No,
There's no getting away from that. So like, tell me, like, do you empower your staff to like really lean into the data as well?
I do. It's been a bit of a challenge, but I think it's something we've already overcome, because again, everyone is so used to the emotion of it. We've had a great weekend. Okay, well, why did we have a great weekend? Well, because you know, we had no callbacks. But let's look into it. And then and you start realizing. So I think a lot of them have become believers based on the data that and the metrics we've created. But
Yeah.
what we're for example, our guest relations manager, she pulls reports every single morning. How many calls did we have? What is the time that we take more calls? What times are guests calling more rather than others? She's able to staff her team better that way, and she's able to assign them. Okay, in the morning we're really busy with chats, because in the evening when we're closed, in the nighttime,
Yeah.
guests are asking questions. So then she can, based on that data, focus on, okay, we need more staff in the morning rather than later on, or when we're in season, do we get more calls after 4 p.m. when we have the guests check in? And if we do, what can we do to alleviate that? Are we giving them all the information they need? Are we having any hiccups? And why are we getting these calls? Are guests having issues with Wi-Fi? Are they calling about their door codes? Is there a glitch? Can we address anything? So I think they have learned to see that when we get ahead of it, it just streamlines the busier days much more, and it makes it easier for their team.
Totally. And one of the things I definitely hear, especially from restaurant people, so I'm curious your take on this, is that like the GM of the restaurant is now like this sort of multifaceted Swiss Army knife of a person that
Yes.
literally needs to, like, the job is so much more than
Yeah.
simply just running a good guest experience anymore. You know what I
Yes.
mean? It's like
Mhm.
you got to know data, you got to understand P&Ls, you got to really quarterback the whole organization. Would you feel like that's the same for you?
I would say so. With tracking the check-ins, we're not on operationally. I'm not to say I'm not sales focused, but to me, really, for all of my teams, the most important part is, when is season? Is it early? Are we staffed properly? And of course, the check-in days, those are huge. So you're basing everything off of that. So unless you start looking at the data, you are setting yourself up for failure, because you're just, guesstimating anything from your schedule to how you're going to handle, the busy check-in days.
No, exactly. And I mean, it's interesting, like how the role has evolved and is going to keep evolving. I guess, like for you, do you guys, because you guys had merged very recently. I mean, how recently was it that you guys became Prime? Was that like in the last few years, or when did that merger
I
happen?
believe so, to be honest with you. I'm not quite sure. In the last 3 years, we still remain, all the companies that I mentioned, AMI Locals,
Yeah.
Railing Accommodations, and Anna Maria Vacations, they're still individual companies. They're just under the Prime umbrella. So we're able to provide our owners and our guests with better services because of our size, which, sometimes people try to use against us, that because of the size, we're not able to provide that human feeling. We're not able to, but I think we're actually better at it because we have the size to back us. We have 15 guest services agents that can take your calls, opposed to a smaller company that has 2 or 3,
Yeah.
So we've been really, in my opinion, been able to provide our clients, both owners and guests, with a much better service because of that growth.
Amazing. And I like the given, like, say we're finally out the back end of like sort of this era of COVID where
Yes.
the economy and hospitality in particular is at more employment now than it was in March 2020. And so I guess, one of the like last questions I'll probably ask you is like, what kind of challenges do you see ahead of you over say the next like 12, 18 months?
I would say just the challenges of, as we're growing, other companies are growing as well. And it is a small island. And even in Lido and Siesta Key, just making sure that we stand out and that we provide a top-notch product, as the economy is shifting, people are, and even with COVID, the cruises are, off the rocket. Everyone's taking cruises.
Yeah.
Those people used to come and stay with us 2-3 years ago. And how do we win them back over? So making sure we have, we provide guests with excellent service, a 5-star service. We get 5-star reviews. We get that repeat guest back. I think that's going to be, I wouldn't say a challenge, but I think that's one of our main goals, because there's so many new homes on the island. There's so much product out there. How do we stand out and differentiate ourselves from, the next company? And again, I think, in my opinion, it's our people and our passion for providing that.
That's awesome. All right. Hey, well, I'm at the part of the show where I ask a particularly awkward question of everybody.
Oh, goodness.
It's actually not that bad. I just like to say that because I was like, oh no. And it makes me laugh. I'm just so cruel. The question I like to ask people is like, what advice would you give people listening to this podcast? Like very open-ended.
Advice about hospitality, or?
Well, the audience of this podcast is typically your peers.
Yes.
So like, what advice would you give?
Don't ever forget the human factor. Don't ever forget that we're all people, whether it's employees, any client. There's always so much to be said about just a human factor, issue small or big. It can be resolved if you're compassionate and if you show that you care. There's always a solution. It's just your approach and how you go about resolving it.
Okay, that's awesome. Taya, that's it. Like, we just did 38 minutes. Can you believe that?
I actually can. It feels like we've been chatting for 10 minutes.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Alex.